Good afternoon. We'll call to order the Grand Forks Growth Fund Committee. It's March 25th at approximately 4:30 p.m. Item number 1 is roll call.
Crary.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Kavami. Ozowski.
Here.
Weigel.
Here.
Whitney. Wolf.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, minutes, meeting of February 26, 2024.
I move approval.
We have a motion by Osowski, second by Crary. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item number 3, PACE loan request, Integrated Steel Solutions. Mr. Hatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Weigel, members of the Growth Fund Committee, Kevin Hatcher, Business Development Manager.
Thanks, Andy. Business Development Manager at the Grand Forks CDC. Speaking on behalf of the Growth Fund PACE request of $16,311. You have some familiarity with this PACE request through Integrated Steel Solutions. They actually, we presented a request in the past back on October 2nd for their cold form steel machinery. That was approved. A little bit of an update with that company. What was reported in October, the total revenue reported was $4.2 million. In 2022, we're looking at an increase in fiscal year of 2023 of $5.8 million. But just for those who aren't familiar about this company, it's a manufacturing steel component company that fabricates structural steel used in wall panels, truss, bathroom pods, needing prefabricated structural steel components. A good example actually is just right across the street here over at Franklin on 4th. They actually did the steel panels over here at this facility. So just a good guide behind it. So they utilize frame CAD technology and cold form steel for their framing processes, increasing efficiency from 20 to 50% rather than the traditional measures. So with this project specifically, they're looking to expand their administrative space about 1,300 square feet. And then additionally, they'll be including some large overhead doors installed in the facility, providing that ease of access for large trucks to be loaded with their new crane equipment that's included in this loan, transporting the steel material to actual projects such as the Franklin on 4th project there. So before I invite Mr. Fournier up here, the PACE details, we're looking at a total project of $540,000. We're requesting a PACE subsidy to reduce the interest rate from 7.7% to 3.5% on a $405,000 note from First State Bank for that expansion of the administrative space, refitting the overhead doors, and then the purchase of that new crane equipment. So the request, as I mentioned, was $16,311, and that's going to leverage the Bank of North Dakota grant portion of PACE for $30,291. The security behind it is personal guarantees from owners, Scott Fournier right next to me here, and then Nathan Benson, and the UCC equipment lien on the equipment. As Mr. Conlon mentioned in the report nicely, we can't really talk about or demonstrate the loan to value with this loan in itself. So we are going into the big picture with the First State Bank and the Growth Fund. So the Growth Fund total loan portfolio we see is including this loan of $146,762. First State Bank is about 1.7 million, so that's about 1.8 million. And then the value demonstrated from First State Bank tied to the collateral is about 3 million. So we're looking at about a loan to value of 61.05% on the total company itself for that package. So now I'm just going to invite Mr. Fournier to speak on behalf of the company.
Just real quick, Mr. Hatcher, just for the record, Mr. Kavami is online. So, Mr. Fournier.
Hello, all. Any questions? What do you guys want to know about integrated?
Ms. Osowski.
I have a question. So in this report, it states that you guys have multiple PACE loans, correct? They're loans, right?
Yep, that's correct.
So there are 2 from 2019, 2 from 2020, 1 from 2023, and they're all in deferral. At what point are you going to make payments, I guess?
That'll be.
I can address that one.
That'll
So,
be paid.
Standard for all of our PACE loans, flex PACE loans, it's a standard deferral, and that matches up with the commercial loan that we're buying the interest rate down on. So in this case, you'll see it's a 5-year note from First State Bank. So our loan is deferred for that 5-year period while they're making payments on the commercial note. And then when that note is paid off, then our note comes due. And they'll be making payments then, monthly payments. So they're not in default or past due or
Right,
anything.
they're deferred. but-
Right,
Right.
No, we're
So
making
the
we're making
two-
payments every month.
to
So
the
the two-
bank, right, yeah, yeah.
So the two from 2019, those, we should start receiving payments for those shortly, right? Because you said 5 years.
I don't recall the exact deferral length for those. The deferral length depends on the nature of the note. So if it's an equipment loan, it's probably in that 5 to 7 year window. Real estate is typically closer to the 10-year window. So I don't recall which, just looking at these, which loan was for what.
I would like to know that, just
Sure.
to
I
see.
can
like-
answer that. So those first two are actually a different company. That's ISSHC, that's our holding company. So I'm partners, that's myself, John Miscavige, Ryan Carlson, and Brett Carlson. Those are being paid, and they're on a 5-year, and yes, you will start to be paid back. Well, I think we got maybe a year or two, and those will go back. But that's ISSHC. We're ISS Inc., we're the manufacturing arm. We just bought the new machine, and we have the PACE loan for, I think there was the original office fit up. So we actually currently have, well, this will be the third one, the other one being the new machine that shows up in July.
But you're responsible for all of these?
Two different companies are correct.
The ownership of the entities is different, just, maybe a quirk of how PACE FlexPace is that our loan is tied to the entity who is taking out the private loan, basically. So for these loans back then, it was a real estate related project. So their holding company, ISSHC LLC, which has a different ownership makeup than this entity, those first 3 loans are to that entity. The 2 most recent then, and including this one, would be to Integrated Steel Solutions, Inc. So,
Yes.
yeah, just a
So
little.
what's the math on all these loans that they have out, just through us, I guess?
It's really on a case, but are you talking about for this instance, for this application?
You, like the total,
Well, one's for almost 50, and then what, another,
It's
Yep.
it's a case-by-case basis based on the application, which was approved through the growth fund committees in the past,
were
really.
you asking the total outstanding from us?
yeah.
I think you said 146
Yes,
roughly.
my apologies. It's 146,762, and that would include this request of that $16,311.
Do we have caps on how much, certain individuals can borrow then with this, or is it just,
The growth fund doesn't have any caps as to, I guess, a maximum number of times a company can come back to this because they're all tied to individual projects. The program is meant to support expansions or business growth, business projects, that sort of thing.
How many
So they can't come back for the same project more than once. This is various projects, they're doing different things, different expansions, that sort of thing. So the program, it is this, same entity or groups of supporting similar work, I guess, out of that property, but it's all expansion focused. The growth fund certainly, could at its discretion put a cap on the number of times someone can come back. I think, that's certainly within your purview if that's something you'd like to consider. But as of now, there's nothing
One thing I would.
in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Conlon. One thing I would add to is Bank of North Dakota, they have a policy that's structured of each biennium, there's a cap of a grant portion of $500,000. So that's really what we go by from what I've gathered through the growth fund policy. Once they're capped at that $500,000, they're not able to obtain an additional dollar amount until the next biennium time for review.
I guess one thing that I would add real quick is, I think this program is different than maybe our startup loan that we used to have where we ran into issues where we weren't getting paid back. Obviously, this company's already met all the guidelines through their own private bank. I'm assuming if there was issues that First State Bank wouldn't have provided them that funding in order to come forward to get this funding. And so I think that's something to think about, that it's obviously different than the other programs that we've done in the past. Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, I would say that, thank you, Mr. Fournier, for being here and continuing to invest in the region. I think that was well said there. The PACE program is a good program. It's a good partnership with a private lender as well as the Bank of North Dakota, which they do set annual caps. Therefore, and that's a grant that's forgivable, that buys down the interest rate. Our loan as the growth fund is a loan that comes in at the end, so it helps businesses save some interest now, but it pays us back at the end. In my opinion, we don't have a cap because Bank of North Dakota caps it. That's why the discussions in the past, I think. I'm in favor. I think this has been approved by First State Bank, and I guess I'm in favor of moving forward with this, but those are my comments.
Mr. Curry?
Yeah, all great points. Mr. Fournier, again, I also appreciate you coming here again. If you can shed a little light, actually, which I think helps showcase really the whole purpose of PACE and flex-based loans. I see now, because you guys are now at 33 full-time employees looking for 7 more. When you first when you first utilized the growth fund or any of that, how many employees did you have and how many do you have now? Tell us a little bit your growth,
My growth, okay.
Yeah.
Well, when we started the company, there was 4 of us, but we were all owners. We had 1 hire really through the first year, and then we have grown exponentially over the years. I can talk about our revenue. We were maybe the first year 250,000, and I think we hit 800 or 900, and then we were 1.3. We hit 3.8 or 3.9, 5.9 last year, and we're on pace for 8 or 9 million this year. So we continue to grow. We just opened an office. We hired another structural engineer, and we are now renting office space, and I have an office in Rochester. So we're growing that part of the company as well. And then, really we have 30 full-time employees, and we regularly have another 10 to 15 part-timers, college kids that come and work at our shop. I got college-age kids, and they all have friends, and they all want to work, and we have a very flexible schedule. They can come during their afternoons or days they don't have classes. So, and we're pushing and looking at another expansion potentially in Rapid City, South Dakota. There's a company down there that has equipment similar to what we have. They were in a pod business, and the interest rates and hospitality has kind of slowed down a little bit for them. So they're looking to kind of do what we're doing, but we're not going to give that to them for free. So we have all kinds of things going on, and we're growing, and it's been great.
Really, I appreciate your telling us all that. You don't have to disclose all of that, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. You guys, it's right. It's
Yeah,
because of the community that we're doing what we're doing.
And that's part of the reason why I asked the question is I think you're a great example of. I think more businesses should be out there utilizing, in my opinion, of all of the loans that the Growth Fund approves. The PACE and the flex-based loans are no-brainers, right? And it's a proven example that versus like we've deviated away from startup and stuff. It's a proven example. Like, hey, let's help these successful companies get bigger and grow employment. And started off with 4 owners, and now you got 30 plus employees looking to get 40, expanding throughout the region. And so I just think it's great. I think it helps just kind of showcase that. So I appreciate you again divulging that information. You didn't have to, but I think it helped. I think it really just showcases the strength of these programs. So appreciate it.
Without a doubt.
Ms. Wasowski?
So you talked about, hiring additional employees, but then you also talked about opening offices in an office in Rochester. Where will those employees be based in Grand Forks?
Those employees they're going to stay remote because today's day and age, not everyone wants to move to Grand Forks. Obviously, the revenue and everything that's happening is in Grand Forks. We're supporting it's North Dakota companies and everything else. So they're
Are those
remote
jobs
employees.
posted so local people can
Oh, constantly.
see the positions that are open,
Yep,
at least.
and-
I have a hard, it bothers me to, fund expansion when the people who are, the expansion that you're talking about, they're not even in Grand Forks,
That's not, well, no, that isn't for those people. The expansion that we're happening here is for the people in Grand Forks, so we're adding 8 more office spaces because because 3 of us have had to move over. So right now, my company has the manufacturing facility. We have 2 satellite engineers in Rochester. We have 3 people over at the Center of Innovation. And we need to all come together. Yes. So that, and
Maybe I can
then I have
clarify.
5 people, I have 5 people squeezed into a 3-person office, 2-person office really, at our shop right now.
That's-
So we will fill up the office space, that's what this is for, office space and break room space for our current employees. So we're in a big shop, we're manufacturing, right? So there's no air conditioning or anything like that for the whole shop. So we're basically lopping off 1/6 of the shop and gonna put in break room space, and it's for everybody that's here.
Thank you. Further comments, Mr. Holth?
Mr. Fournier, thanks for being here. I think that, you being back here again for multiple loans, we've had other companies that have been here for multiple loans, and I think that's proof that the programs work. I mean, we're talking about, these loans are not for debt consolidation or short-term cash flow needs. I mean, these are expansion notes here, which frankly is our charge as the growth fund, is to help companies do that and do that in a responsible manner. So I think it's exciting. I think this is exactly what we're charged with doing, and I think this is proof that these loans work when they're used the right way. So again, I support it, and I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Holth,
I'll second.
second by Wolf. Further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you all,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Move on to item number 4, EDARLF plan update. Mr. Conlon.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Weigel, members of the committee. So a standard kind of requirement, I guess, for EDA RLFs is a 5-year plan update. The plans are meant to basically include and provide the EDA outlining your local priorities, economic conditions, that sort of thing, and then your strategies for how you're going to meet those conditions, meet the needs of your local community with the RLF. As well as, provide a ton of EDA boilerplate compliance sort of things and getting them on the record and in writing. So for this particular plan update, you'll remember back in 2020, we received the, what we called the C-RUN program, COVID Response Unmet Needs Program, obviously intended to meet the kind of short-term, I believe they use the term economic dislocation caused by COVID. We put together a plan at that time that was obviously quite focused on the initial COVID response and our strategies to deal with that. And then at the time kind of provide light detail in terms of what they call the revolve phase looked like when the loans come back in. We had said at that time more or less that it's going to mirror what we've called the legacy RLF, our previous RLF, which was a gap financing sort of program. So this update, with that program now defederalized, and with us recently having completed a strategic planning exercise, as well as moving well past, I think at this point, the initial COVID response focus of that program, we felt it made a lot of sense to update the plan to kind of reflect those recently updated JDA priorities, incorporate some updated local financial, post-COVID local economic data rather, so that we can come up with some maybe more timely strategies for how we want to utilize this fund. So with this fund, it is deployment of capital or cash utilization, as EDA says, is a priority. It's important that we keep our funds moving out the door. So with that sort of aperture, I guess, to look at this program as well as incorporating those recently updated JDA priorities, you'll find that's what the bulk of the update includes, is folding those priorities into the document. And honestly, a lot of the rest of it is EDA compliance sort of updating those requirements to reflect the latest and greatest in guidance from EDA. So happy to stand for any questions or sit for any questions on that.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Conlon. Yeah, a few questions, obviously familiar, but first from a high-level standpoint, and I know on the last page it does list out, I think, the outstanding loans. But we've got about almost 1.4 million. How much is outstanding in the program? And how much room do we have left right now as it sits?
So we've got, we just checked this right before, or as of today, we have roughly $290,000 available for lending. So eager to keep working with the folks at the EDC to find a home for that. I think we are close to, Colin might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a 20 or 25% cap or utilization rate. It's not exactly that figure, but we're approaching our cap, so we do need to find a home for one of those funds. Looking forward to working with the folks from the EDC on that.
Okay, thank you. In the document itself, page 8, it talks about target percentages and focus in different industries, which from a concentration standpoint makes sense to me. If we're going to submit this document, I'm just curious, are we in compliance with those percentages?
Those percentages are, you'll see they're windows. I think based on it's a bit of a combo between our past performance with our legacy EDA RLF. Also with our C-Run one, it's less, I would say we're not necessarily in compliance in these areas with our current allocation of those funds, as though that focus was sort of on, we had a lot of different kinds of businesses come in, we had some hospitality, we had some, nonprofits. We had a wide mix for that initial COVID response. This is meant to sort of guide that disbursement phase, what we'd like to get to, and it's informed kind of by our previous, our legacy EDA RLF performance, as well as kind of aspirationally what we'd like to reach to. But they are meant to serve as kind of guidelines or targets of what we're shooting for, and that's that window, that 10% to 30%, 20 to 30%. That's kind of what we're targeting.
And that's fair, and I'm fine with the percentages. I'm just saying, when we update these, I think we should look at them and talk about, are we in range or not? But I don't have a problem with them, just something moving forward maybe. Just to point out. The page 10 I'd looked at, and it's got a nice pretty picture. Thank you, whoever took the time to do that. And it lays out kind of how we operate. I'm curious, we mentioned the Grand Forks Region EDC. We have the City of Grand Forks in the picture. We kind of described the Grand Forks Growth Fund Committee in the wording. I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a picture with them and then talk about our job is to advise the JDA. That's just maybe an idea if you're looking for them. And then just a couple other comments. Page 13, procedures for loan approval, talks about within this, applications receiving a positive recommendation from the Growth Fund Committee are forwarded to the JDA for final action. I think ultimately what we're doing is we forward our recommendation, whether it's positive or negative. So I would suggest that we consider, our job is to forward our recommendation to the JDA for final approval and clear that up. At least in my mind, the next sentence doesn't seem to be even appropriate to me. There are times where things might go right to the JDA. Ultimately, it's their job to approve it, but we weigh in on our recommendation. And it does talk about, in that same section, Growth Fund Committee action is by majority vote of a quorum. It says 3 or more members. I think that might be more now. We have 7 members, so you might want to update that. And final comment, page 15, in looking at that, under section 1, recipients, describing of what borrowers have to provide for us. Recipients must, for a period of 5 years, agree to provide the JDA upon demand with. I'm wondering if that's true, or some of the notes are for longer than 5 years. if we require it for the life of the note. And I don't know the answer to that, but that's a question. So those are maybe a lot of little points, but thank you for forwarding or providing the document. Those are just some of my observations, so.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Yeah.
Further comments? Do you guys need a motion on this one?
Yeah, we do, we need, I guess, yeah, a motion, authorization to forward this to the, well, to the JDA and then to the EDA to submit. EDA also will likely have comments, and thank you for those. We'll gladly incorporate those into the document. So I think we'll incorporate those, pass them forward to the JDA, and then with its concurrence, we'll send it to EDA for their any comments or authorization on their part. But yeah, we would be requesting a motion tonight.
Do you have comments?
Yeah, just one quick question. What's the, just looking at on the very end of the appendix, what's the annual cash flow? So obviously, I mean, it looks like there's, two have been released, one was written off, and the other one was paid in full. Of the other ones, I assume everybody's, it says active, so obviously I'm assuming they're all good standing active. What's the annual cash flow for that that's coming back into the growth fund?
That I don't know off the top of my head in terms of what we receive back annually. I can certainly get that to you as soon as I get back down to my desk. But there are, I will just note, since you mentioned, there are a couple in there that they're active in the sense that they're repaying us. There's a couple that are, a few months past due. We're working with them.
Okay.
None that have reached the stage of, like they're not going to pay us back. I think, in fact, some of it's just some logistical issues that we're working through. But I just wanted to point that out since you had mentioned that.
That was going to be my next question, yeah. The first one, you don't need to go, I was just more or less just curious to see, how, it's revolving, so just how quickly it's going to revolve, so if we can, do additional loans in the future, just kind of having that in my mind. But then I was also going to ask an update on any of them that are worrisome, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Do we have a motion by Mr. Holth?
Yeah, I would move that we advance this to the JDA with the incorporation of Mr. Wolf's suggestions.
Second.
We have a motion by Wolf, second by Crary. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. I believe that concludes our agenda for the evening. We have a
Mr. Chairman, one
Yes.
more thing before we adjourn. This will be my last meeting with you fine folks. My retirement is coming up, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to have worked with you all for all these years.
Thank you.
And leaving it in very capable hands that are scattered throughout the room.
Well, we appreciate everything you've done, Meredith. I know for me, I've been on the committee a little while now, and she's brought me up to speed on a lot of different things that I really didn't understand. And just thank you for your commitment to the city and to the citizens of Grand Forks.
Should we also have like an honorary chair that, so because it's public, so you can come anytime you want and come hang out with us again.
It's quite exciting. I'm
Yeah.
sure I'll be back.
Perfect. We have a motion to adjourn by Osowski,
I'll
second
second.
by Wolf. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks, the proud home of the University of North Dakota. This is the time and place for the Grand Forks City Council's Committee of the Whole meeting. Begin with roll call, please.
Weigel.
Here.
Osowski.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Lunsky.
Here.
Kwame.
Yep.
Bean.
Here.
Sandy. We have a quorum.
Very good, thanks. Item 2, updates and information items. 2.1, Department of Building Safety Rental Program Overview. Mr. Baslug.
All right. Committee members, tonight what I'm going to do is just give you a brief overview. There's been several comments at a couple council meetings, also questions from council members on where we are with the rental program, what's going on with the rental program. So about six slides, go through a quick overview, and then ask if you have any questions. The objectives are very simple. I'm going to go over what we're currently doing, where we're going, and then the strike program. I'll touch on the strike program. So what's the rental program? Several of you may know. For those of you that don't, it's created out of Chapter 21, Article 6, residential rental licenses. And really the purpose is to protect the public safety and general welfare of the residents of the city. And we focus on that when we're doing our inspections and making sure that they're meeting safety, health, fire, and zoning codes. So when do we require a license? You'll see in 21-603, that sums it up and says a license is always required for something that's rented. But then in 604, there's an exemption, and you'll see in the exemptions, they don't apply to campus dorms, resident facilities, et cetera. And what I have highlighted there is 3 or more rental units within the same building. So essentially what's licensed in the city of Grand Forks is the single-family rental units and the duplexes. And so these are the current numbers that we have. Currently, we have about 1,492 single-family or duplex licenses, 1,763 certificates of occupancy. So that's your single-family, that's your duplex, and then that's your multifamily as well. The next number that I have on the slide is 8,553 units. It's probably a little higher than that. That's the last number that we have from the Greater Grand Forks Apartment Association, and when they look at units, that's like a bedroom, if you will. My guess is we're probably closer to 10,000 at this point. The department has 2 building inspectors that handle the rental program, and the number one violation that we find on a daily basis is smoke detectors. They're either missing or not working. We typically give the individuals 45 days to mitigate any violations that we find. Smoke detectors, those are life safety items. They're typically fixed right away. We receive a phone call or a picture the same day that they've been fixed. So what are we doing? Right now, all known rentals in the city, they're on a 5-year inspection rotation. The inspections, they're no longer scheduled by administrative staff. So the old way, administrative staff would call the landlords, call the management companies, try to schedule an inspection, and it just wasn't efficient. So we passed that on to the actual inspectors. The inspectors own it from the beginning all the way to the end, and that creates creating those relationships with the landlords, with the rental companies, and with the tenants. Again, our inspections are performed with an emphasis on safety and health, and complaints take priority and oftentimes turn into an inspection. So several complaints throughout a week. We probably get in excess of 20 complaints a week. The majority of those complaints, though, are usually complaints that can be hashed out between the landlord and the tenant themselves, and there's no authority that the city has. But we still take them seriously and try to point them in the right direction. Currently, we're at a 95% success rate with violations being mitigated within the first 45 days since the hiring of the 2 new building inspectors in 2023. That other 5%, those are abnormalities. So those are things as the building inspectors will be going through, and they may have a rental unit that nobody's living in, and it's undecided what they're going to do with it, how they're going to remodel. So a lot of those sit on our tickler that they're past due inspections, but we monitor those. We don't currently have anything that needs to go forward to go to the city prosecutor because somebody's not following up. Rewind about 4 years ago, we had a stack of those. So they're doing a great job when it comes to compliance. So what are our next step? I talked a little bit about the 5-year rotation. Myself and staff have met, and we feel it's unacceptable to look at a 5-year rotation. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can actually be within all these rental units. So in the single family, the duplex, and the multifamily on a yearly basis. We know that's virtually impossible unless we do some creative thinking. So thinking outside the box. Staff has presented a self-inspection or a self-reporting program. We haven't baited it yet. We've just talked about it, but that's something most likely that's going to come down the road. And that'll come from the aspect of our relationships that we have with those management companies. A lot of these companies have third-party inspectors that already come through because it may be for HUD. They have to do a special inspection. A lot of things that they're doing are the same things that we're doing. So why recreate the wheel? So something that the department's currently working on. And then additionally, I'm going to bring an ordinance change proposal to council sometime in late April, early May. I'm doing so because I want to keep that coincided with the other codes. Our codes from our department only come in front of you every 3 years. So I want to make sure that's one of the additional codes that's coming forward. But part of that is to clean up the language in our current ordinance in chapter 21. We have some different positions that we've changed titles to and different ways of doing things. So we want to clean up the policy aspect of the ordinance and then also look at the ordinance itself when it comes to codes. Several of you may remember a while ago I was in front of council. We talked about the International Property Maintenance Code. That went in front of the Board of Appeals and they looked at the International Property Maintenance Code. Fargo, Minot, they utilize it. It's very, very stringent. And a lot of the things that are in that International Property Maintenance Code, we already have an ordinance. So what we've done is we've taken what we have in ordinance and what we need, and I'll be coming forward with basically a list the code will be written out within the ordinance or a recommendation. In addition to that, we've created a great partnership with the Greater Grand Forks Department Association. We meet with them on a quarterly basis, and they've been giving some great insight. And we're using them as an avenue to get the message out because we don't know what we don't know, and they don't know what they don't know. So we're partnering with them. And then we continue to develop our relationships with management companies. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the strike program. It's been brought up a few times in front of council. You'll see under 21.6.610, it talks about maintenance of units conducted on licensed premises. The first two are really self-explanatory. It has these, they have to be maintained and occupied in accordance with all the applicable codes and city ordinances, and then they can't be a nuisance per North Dakota Century Code. But the third one is really the caveat, and that's when somebody says strike program, what are you talking about? The first two, absolutely, they essentially could be a strike. You'll see in the memo that's attached from Mr. Gosted that they could be a strike. We typically handle that administratively, so there's not a need for a strike when it comes to the code side of things. The aspect of, we've talked about strikes in the past, are three things: allowed party, provisions of alcohol to minors, and allowing 4 or more individuals in a rental unit. Department of Building Safety focuses on that third one, allowing 4 unrelated persons to reside, but typically I have not given out a strike because we can typically solve that right away. We'll get a complaint, or we'll see that, hey, there's 6 cars. We'll go out to them. That's not to say they'll fix it. That's not to say that it doesn't change as soon as we leave, but they're mitigating the issue, so we don't feel that a strike's necessary in that case. A and B, those are strikes that really have the purview of PD, and that, I guess Chief Nelson's here, and Chief Nelson can speak to that if you guys have questions regarding those two. But when the question keeps posing about why isn't there a strike, why isn't there a strike, this is where we're focusing right now, as what the strike program is. That's what I got. So now I'm prepared to answer any questions and go from there.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Ms. Linsky, please.
I missed it on the first slide. It was UND dorms. Who else doesn't need it?
So the UND dorms, the residence facilities, so hospitals, nursing homes, retirement homes, and then dwellings that have 3 or more rental units in them.
So like the place across the street?
Yep, so that's considered multifamily. It's not licensed. It doesn't require a license by the city. We still put it in the rental program. So all the multifamilies, they're still in the rental program. They're just not paying a license fee.
I guess I'm not sure why, like a large facility wouldn't pay a license fee, but the small ones will? Is that correct?
I think maybe I don't like to defer that question to someone on previous council, but that came way before my time, and I believe that there was, and maybe Todd has an answer to that, but there was discussions on who pays for what.
Councilmember Walensky, back in the day when, this was during a time when, I'm going to say in the late 2000s, where UND was expanding, more enrollment, and really this university area neighborhood was being more and more taken over by rental units, and UND didn't have the housing, and nor did we have all the private housing that we have for multiplexes around there, and it was quite a kerfuffle back in the day. And really the answer for the city council is let's focus on these single-family homes that were being turned into rental units. And so this program was created not for the multiplexes that are in the downtown Grand Forks. This program was created with the two inspectors and the kind of the whole organizational scheme because of all those home rentals and trying to monitor how many people were in there, how they were parking, where they could park, because it was causing a neighborhood disruption. And so that's the reason why it was focused on those 3 or less, because it was more focused on a former single-family residential area being turned into a rental area, and the council wanted to focus on that and not on, multifamily units.
Okay. And then my other question is, if I am a landlord, does the strike come to me or does the strike come to my tenant?
Now, if we indeed do a strike, if a strike is communicated from the police department to our department, or if we indeed do a strike because 4 or more individuals, that'll come to the landlord, the owner of the property. Certainly, the tenants get a letter, just as we do in everything typically. We may have a complaint that comes through, let's say out in the UND area. We often have complaints where individuals are parking on the lawn. By the time we get out there, they're not on the lawn anymore. It's clear that they've been parking on the lawn. The tenant gets a letter as well as the landlord. So the strike comes to the owner of the building, though. The other ones will just be notified as well, though.
And does that have to be within so many years?
There's a layout in the code for the 3 strikes, if 3 strikes are instituted, and I think it's within a 24-month period, then the city attorney has the ability to do some things in there. But that doesn't elude us just because of strike, meaning that we can still move forward and take something directly to the city attorney saying that there's a violation. Strike's just another method, and once you get to that 3rd strike, then I would take it to the city attorney, and they would either make a recommendation or they would to pull the certificate of occupancy so they could no longer rent.
Okay, so just so I understand, I'm sorry, but so if I'm a landlord and I have a tenant who has a party, that's a strike. Then 18 months later, they move out, same thing happens, I get 2 strikes?
Well, it's up to the, I guess in current city code, the zoning administrator, we no longer have the title of a zoning administrator, up to my staff to distinguish that and then work within the bounds of the strikes. So you would look at that and say, okay, this was individual, Brandon was there, the strike was underneath this individual. Most likely they would probably still get a strike to say, hey, you still have 2 loud parties, but we'd have that discussion when we look at it, and I think Mr. Gossett has something.
I can add to it. It's a 24-month look back period, kind of a rolling. So you, in your instance, if it was 18 months apart, if there was another quote strike that occurred, and the strike isn't necessarily just the loud parties. It could be, if you're not following the ordinance, that could be deemed to be a strike as well, right? And in your example, that would be a 2nd strike. And then if it happened again within that 24-month period of time, that becomes the 3rd strike potentially.
It's interesting that I'm responsible, well, I'm not a landlord, but the landlord is responsible for the tenant. So I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. I think Chief Nelson had something to say.
I just wanted to add just to your question that you had. When you're looking at a strike, they're not automatically going to be notified, hey, we need to institute a strike. So let's just say the scenario you brought up. If we go to that same apartment 18 months later, one of the things that my officers will ask is, how many times have we been here and who was the renter? And if it's not the same renter, then we're not going, then it wouldn't be instituting a strike on that same one coming after you, because we understand that renters are trying to work with us. In fact, now, I went back, and I don't know that we've issued a strike within the last 10 years, because we've actually gotten loud parties under control. And the way we've been able to do that is kind of the model that Inspections is using, is that we work regularly with our apartment owners and our residents, and we have a rental notification form where we'll just send something in, hey, by the way, somebody had a loud party at your house. And actually, majority of the landlords have been policing themselves. So we so it's on the books, but like I said, I don't believe we've used one over the last 10 years. So it's not rampant like it's open season on landlords.
In fact, if I might point out, while we've had, during citizen comments, for instance, suggestions that renters are running meth labs and all kinds of terrible things, the vast majority of landlords and renters in our community are responsible property owners and neighbors. In fact, as Chief Nelson has just pointed out, this really isn't a current problem. In fact, on slides 7 and 8, the 3 points that you make for the strike program, the first two are actually about the responsibilities of the landlord to maintain the property. And this can go both ways. It isn't all just always bad renters. We occasionally have problems with landlords as well. And that's probably, as much as anything, what you see in inspections. And law enforcement may see more of the renters. But as Chief Nelson's just pointed out, that's not been a recurring problem recently.
Yeah, your comments are correct. The landlords, our tenants, we have few problems with them throughout the community. And the ones that we do, we're able to, once we get involved and engage with them, we're able to mitigate it pretty quickly.
Thanks. That was nice of you to take my long rant and refer to it as a comment. Thanks. Anything else from Mr. Baselug at this time? Yes, Mr. Vian, please.
If you could, I think we didn't get a copy of this, right? Can you send out a copy of this report?
Yeah, I will, and it should be downloaded, but if it's not, we'll get it.
I had to refresh my browser a couple times, and it did come up.
And it did come up.
Yeah, it wasn't there until
But if you didn't have
about
it,
4
we'll
o'clock.
make sure that you get it.
Yeah.
Okay. And could you go back to by the numbers?
Yep.
We talk about, a little bit, we were looking at the number, 8,553 units. Do we know exactly the number of units? Aren't we able to monitor and track? Because you need to, every 5 years to have done your inspections or whatever that needs to be so that we have an ongoing program that's defined?
So, Councilmember Bean and members of the committee, what's missing? So the number of units is like sleeping units, that's bedrooms. And if you go back above to that 1,763, those are the number, we could call that units, but those are the number of rented spaces that we have, meaning
Okay.
that 1,492 of those are single or duplex. Those are the only numbers that we have. We have to manually go in. We can work with assessing to go in and look at those additional 300 to see how many out of those 300, how many units are in each one of those. But currently, that's not something, we can go to certificate of occupancy and see that there's 25 units in this one, 25 units in this one. We're trying to work on that so we get a better number, and so as we have that partnership, to always have those updated numbers to know exactly how many we have out there. There are some that you can be straightforward that have fallen through the cracks that we don't know about, because if it's an older building and somebody converts it and doesn't tell us, and we don't hear about it unless we see it, that's the only time that we can move forward. So there are some misses out there. We're trying to straight track that and get it.
How do you track that to try to get that updated? And
So what we do, typically, probably on a quarterly basis, what we can do is we work within the utility billing aspect of our city system, and we cross-reference those. So if I'm the owner of the building, and there's a different individual paying the water bill, that's at least the first cue that'll point us in that direction, that, hey, we're missing something here.
Yes, Mrs. Sowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. How do you determine like who's actually living in the home? I mean, I live on the north end by UND. We have so many rental properties. Our streets are full of cars. How do you guys verify who is living in these homes? Like, can you contact the post office to see who's actually receiving mail there? Or what, do we just need to take pictures of the cars outside and then you guys can do the work to determine who's actually living there? I think that's one of the huge issues on the north end.
So, Councilmember Osowski, members of the committee, typically what we do in those cases, there's a couple of different ways of determining it. So if a complaint comes in, say in your instance, 6 vehicles, and we know that there's only supposed to be 4 individuals unrelated in that building.
Right.
We typically will go out there, we'll contact either the landlord or the management company, say, hey, we know you have more than 4 out there. We'll ask them to see the lease. Some of them share, some of them don't. Most of them we're trying to get, so they put into the lease about the 4 unrelated individuals. But that's really the only way. And then we do digging, as Councilmember Bean asked. We'll start digging around, see who's getting the water bills, et cetera. I don't think we've had a means to call the post office to see who's actually getting mail there.
Are you allowed to do that?
I don't think so, but I guess I've never tried. So, but the biggest thing that we do is we just follow up with that complaint. And so, as you said, when complaints come into 311, for example, for the pictures, we immediately follow up and contact the individual that owns that property, and then go out there to try to verify.
I have another question. Like, how many people can live in a home? Like, how many people per bedroom?
Well, if it's a family, there's nothing saying that a family can't
Right.
live there. But it's 4 unrelated individuals. That's it. Now, you look at that.
So you can shove, what, 10 people in a 2-bedroom house? And
No, it's 4 unrelated individuals are the max.
Right,
Now, this
if
is
you're
for a
related.
single family in duplex. So they're in violation, though, if you're shoving 10 people into a house, unless it's a family.
Okay.
So-
And then for rental units, you have to have 1 off-street parking space per bedroom.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
So if we go do an inspection, or somebody's trying to turn a single-family dwelling into a rental unit, and it's a 5-6 bedroom home, and they only have 6 parking spots, well, they only get the 4 anyway for the 4 unrelated individuals. And
Oh, so you
that-
only get 4.
So their certificate of occupancy will state that it's only rentable for 4 individuals, unrelated individuals, or
So-
a family.
So what happens if you have like a home that's a home with 2 bedrooms and there's only, they say that only 2 people are living there. I'll have to go back and think, I got a perfect house for you though.
Well, I'll be happy to follow up via email or look at that house, and we can certainly look into it.
Okay.
But to answer your original question, the easiest way for council members or citizens of the community is if they have a complaint or see something, go through 311. Staff follows up with that immediately. And
Okay, and for all the 311 complaints that you've had about occupancy and the number of occupants in a unit, how many people have you found in violation of that?
Not very many. I mean, we'll go out there, we'll see. I can give you an example of one. About a year ago on 6th Avenue, we knew that there was more than 4 unrelated individuals there. We contacted the management company. They allowed inspectors in. They got the individual out.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Mr. Weigel, please.
Just one real quick one. What's the definition of living there? Is it similar to 30 days residency, to be a resident in a ward? I mean, do we have a hard and fast definition? Because when I look at, say around the university area, I could see that you could have 4 people living there, truly living there on the lease, paying rent. But what if a significant other comes and spends the night for 5 days? Are they now living there? Or if they spend it for 10 days? I'm sure Dan's smiling, so he probably has the answer for me.
I probably don't have the answer for you. What I've got is, what the ordinance tells me is that you have to make a determination based upon what's called the fair preponderance of the evidence as to whether there's a violation or not. And so there's going to be a lot of discretion in those type of determinations. And you know what? Discretion is okay.
Yep.
Because discretion means that we get to decide if there's a fair preponderance in the evidence. And if you're seeing that type of activity, for example, I'll give you throw it back at you, is somebody's living there for 5 days, then they leave for a day, and they come back for another 5 days, leave for a day and come back for another 5 days, right? To try to work the system a little bit. Seemed to me that it would be pretty easy to come up with a conclusion that based upon the fair preponderance of the evidence, which is more likely than not, usually is what it means, there's probably a violation there. And so then we'd go through the process and you'd maybe give a strike, maybe you don't, or work it out. I mean, there's going to be a lot of discretion in these type of decisions. So you'd have to leave it up to the inspection department to do their job. It sounds like there hasn't been this level of problem, but if there is, like I said, there's sufficient discretion in the administration, and then ultimately with the mayor, and the appeal would be, I think, would prove difficult if you're facing those type of facts. I think it would be difficult for somebody to overcome that preponderance of the evidence that a violation has occurred.
Thank you.
Seems like two ways to draw a crowd. If you want to talk about potholes in the spring, that'll bring folks out. Or anytime that we want to talk about rental properties. Will this be on the agenda for City Council next week?
Councilmember Weber, we were just planning this as an information item. Certainly, if you want us to just put it on the agenda so that we can have further engagement, we can. But really, our first intent was just to give you an update because the City Council had asked for this update. So that was our intent, to put a period on it. But we can certainly add it to the City Council agenda under informational items at the end of the agenda.
Before we go there, you mentioned that you're coming back next month with a proposal for an ordinance change.
Correct. That'll be towards the latter part of April or early May, where I'll be back with recommended ordinance changes in front
So
of you.
certainly between now and then, constituents could contact their council rep to let them know their concerns, or they could keep an eye out for that agenda item coming up in about a month. Very good.
I think just because there are people here that are interested in this subject matter,
Right.
is the committee of the wholes are meant for, not for public comment. So I think eventually what would be important is that we get this item more fully developed and then put it on the city council agenda, or go all the way through the city council so that citizens can show up, because it'll end up being an action item, and then they'll have the opportunity to provide their feedback as part of that action item. But right now, we're not going to bring it, but we just want to give you a heads up on what we have today. We'll come back, and that'll provide an opportunity for citizens to, as part of action items, to respond.
Thanks for that clarification, Mr. Freeland. We'll watch for this, for an agenda item related to this coming up in about a month then. Thanks.
Hey, Mr. Weber.
Yeah, President Sandy, please.
I think at some point, the city council actually needs to have a discussion as to whether we're going to be leading with a carrot or a stick in this situation, because and I really appreciate what our inspections department does, and they're providing great information, and our PD that's working with the apartment owners or the rental owners, but we are putting them in a very difficult spot, because I don't think we are giving them a clear picture of how we want them handling these things. If we want them aggressively aggressively working with landlords to clean up the parking on the front lawns and dealing with the overcrowding in some of the homes and these sorts of things, and we want them passing strikes rather than kumbaya and working with them. If we want them passing strikes so that they get the message that we're not going to tolerate these things, we need to pass that message on to Mr. Boasflug, Chief Nelson. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what I want, but I think we should have that discussion, decide if that's what we want or how we want to approach it, and then work with them on a plan on how they can move forward. Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Very good. So I had indicated to Mr. Phelan that there was no need to bring this back to council next week. Are you asking that this be on the council agenda for next week for that discussion or at some other time?
No, not necessarily. It sounds like at some point this will come back to council anyway.
Very good.
So we can have that discussion at that time.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, item 2.2, update from the Public Arts Commission, the PAC. Ms. Richards, I heard a rumor that this is your last evening with us. Is that correct?
Well, I'll probably be back next Monday, but that's not the same us. So strictly
Okay.
speaking, you're correct. This will be
Yes.
my last committee of the whole meeting.
We have one more Monday for council, but for the Growth Fund Committee, that was your last.
Yes.
We'll hold the celebration until next week then.
Lots of lasts coming up.
Okay, very good.
So for this last meeting, it's my pleasure to talk about public art. As your staff report notes, in late 2021, City Council authorized funding for Public Arts Commission, or PAC as they're known. This included one-time funding for a couple of specific activities, as well as ongoing annual funding for public art events and kind of the infrastructure, signage, maintenance activities. To give you an update on how they've spent that money and what they've been doing the last couple of years and their plans moving forward, I'd like to bring Jill Nelson, who, along with her work at the Park District, is also Vice Chair of Public Arts Commission. So thank you, Jill.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Welcome.
Thank
Good
you
evening.
very much. Appreciate it. We do have a presentation here, I think.
Can we pull the presentation up? I'm sure they're working on that right now.
No worries.
Is it showing there?
Sorry about that.
Almost. There we go. Can we get it on the other screens?
Okay,
Perfect, right there.
there we go.
There we go.
And
Yeah, perfect. How, can we do it here? Full screen mode? Perfect. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, Jill Nelson. Normally, I work with the city quite a bit as the Director of Operations for the Grand Forks Park District, but it is my pleasure today to put on my PAC hat today. And we also have Vicki Art, our curator here, Marla Defoe, who works in a lot of our marketing and our administration, and then Julie Rigg, on behalf of Visit Greater Grand Forks, is here to show her support as well, so I appreciate them being here. Also, before I begin, I have to say Meredith Richards has been an amazing support system for us and a great partner throughout
And
the
for
last
us
few
as
years.
well, in many ways. Yeah.
She's just amazing, and I wish her the best of luck in her retirement, but we will miss her, of course. So thank you, Meredith. And it is with much great gratitude that I present the overview of the 3 public arts projects that are funded by the City of Grand Forks and managed by the Public Arts Commission, otherwise known as PAC. And we are humbly hoping to continue our current relationship and support the City of Grand Forks. Perfect. Okay. So just a little bit about PAC for those that need a little refresher in case you weren't approving this a few years ago with us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2014. Our overall mission is to support public art and our local arts community, and that means visual artists, performers, musicians, arts organizations. Our overall goal is really to create and increase community vibrancy, and we do that through our active volunteer board of directors. And we do have contracted outsourced support team like our curator and accounting and that sort of thing, but we do not have any staff members. We currently don't have an executive director, but we are looking at potentially hiring one part-time in the next few years here. Other projects that we're a part of is Art Fest, which is a 2-day arts festival. And we bring in over 150 vendors and 35,000 attendees. We're also working with the North Dakota Council on the Arts for a big Arts Across the Prairie project that's across the state. We are, I believe, Region 5, and the sculpture you're seeing right there is actually what will be in our regional area. And then we also have Art Beat, which is a weekly newsletter that goes out to over 4,000 people, and this just supports events and exhibits and all that stuff that's created by artists and our local groups, and then things that we're doing as well. Okay, just a little overview about the projects that we have. We have a special project, so this is like a one-time funding of a registry and art awareness campaign. The purpose of the registry would be to document and photograph the over 145 public works that date back to 1890 around Grand Forks, as well as take that registry and create an awareness campaign. And the goal would be to highlight, promote, and celebrate public art in Grand Forks through this campaign that we're calling Grand Art. And the goal, again, would be to promote this to our community and hopefully use this as a tourism resource as well. And information about the funding, $15,000 for the registry, which has been completed, and up to $35,000 for the awareness campaign. All the projects that we work with you guys are funded on a reimbursement request only, so just so you know. So for this art registry, I am pleased to say that it is completed. We've done the research, documentation, and photography. This has been a 2-year project for artist Greg Vettel. We also hired Skyscopes to do photography as well, aerial photography for us. We've been partnering with the Smithsonian Museum of Art Collections as well as the UND Art Collections to grab all the information that we can about these different public artworks. And then we have established a great relationship with the Greater Grand Forks. We're partnering on making sure that we can create this Grand Art campaign pretty vibrantly. They have a lot of great resources and see the same goals that we do. So I'm happy to say that through that partnership, we decided to not put the registry on the PAC website. We felt as though it would be much more positive to have it on the visitgrandforks.com website. They have more of the traffic. If our overall goal is to really expose art to the community and create that vibrancy of the tourism, that's the best way to do it. So they now have an area of their website that's dedicated to public art, and you can click through and see each of these pieces. They'll have their own webpage, which then talks about the artist, who contracted it, what's the medium, and history we have about it, as well as the location itself. So part 2 is the part that we are starting up now. That is the art awareness campaign. We've contracted with a local agency to do a lot of design work and do the strategy. And we did kick it off with the 2024 Visitor's Guide. You can see that there's a little section there about the Grand Art Registry. Again, things that we're working on finishing up this year is to have creation of campaign materials. That would be ads, flyers, a map. We're also hoping to create a booklet directory that would have the registry in it as well, and then also mention all the art organizations in town. This would be a printed directory, just a one-time printing, but we understand the second we print it, it will be obviously inaccurate, and so we will have a digital version as well that will continue to update over the years. This will just be a really great way to have distribution so people can have awareness about what's going on. And then, of course, we'll have advertising, social media, that sort of thing. And we're hoping to kick off the campaign at ArtFest this June. And the Visit Greater Grand Forks website currently has it up there, but they are having a remodel of their website. And so we'll have a whole new expanded, more features to their public art area come this fall. And then our future project would be also to have a artist and art organization directory that'll be hosted there as well. The second project that we have is the public arts events and art galleries. And this is annual funding up to $25,000, again, refunded by reimbursement. The purpose of this is to expose the public to art and just really celebrate art in general. These are things that we can be used for artwork, exhibits, events such as the Mayor's Choice, public art galleries, opening events, and temporary and permanent art. And so the great thing about this is that, well, all these projects, to be honest with you, is most of all these funds are going back to local artists, local arts organizations, businesses. They're the ones that we're hiring to do this. So as an overview of 23, just for the Mayor's Choice itself, this is PAC's contracted curator, Vicki Arndt. She'll identify local artists and exhibitions and present them to the mayor. He'll select his favorite, and then we will have usually a 3-month exhibition for this this art gallery that we'll have. They'll also receive a $250 check, as well as the mayor or someone from the city will select an art piece to purchase, and that art piece will then be used in the public, the city-owned buildings. We find that this is a really great way to support the artists themselves. For the Mayor's Choice galleries that we've had, we had one in the spring with the River Forks Watercolor Society and North Star Quilters Guild, and music was by the Grand Forks Symphony String Quartet. We had one in the summer by artist Senta Graduleski, and that was at the UND Art Collections Art Gallery at the Empire Arts Theater. And it was catered by Ellie Zivey and Empire Arts as well. And in the fall, we had one at City Hall, and that was featured Muddy Water Clay Center. If you notice as you walk in, you've seen some unique clay masks. That was part of that project. And the food art display was by Something Sweet. So we're really trying to make sure that we give these funds back to the community as intended. Again, some other things that we manage: 2 permanent public art galleries. One would be at the Alaris Center hallway. Our focus for that area is really emerging artists, so artists that aren't quite as known. And we try and have a few a year. First one was with Beth Spencer. The second half of the year was Flowers Through the Eyes of Warhol by the UND Print Club. It was pretty unique. And then, of course, repair and maintenance of the artwork that gets damaged when you have it in a public facility. That just kind of happens, so got to maintain it. We also have one at the Altru South building in the hallway, an art gallery there with the focus on healing. Have to continue to maintain any damaged art on that. And then we've been able to purchase some art for the city buildings. So we have 11 pieces of art that have been purchased. Most of them are by the 2023 Mayor's Choice winners or prior Mayor's Choice Award winners from the past as well. Oh. Okay, some of our goals for this is to continue with these Mayor Choice exhibitions and then the galleries as well, continue maintaining them. Some new events that we have going on. We have a collaboration that's going on right now at the Arts for Vets studio. It's the Wild Things exhibition. It's a collaboration with Arts for Vets and the North Dakota Museum of Art for a retrospective honoring the 50th anniversary of the publication of Where the Wild Things Are. So it kind of allows everybody to have their own version of the cover of Where the Wild Things Are. It's actually pretty cool. People use a lot of different mediums, and it's very creative. And our hope is to, that we can do more collaboration, things like this in the future with other arts organizations. We're also looking at hosting the October Chamber Business After Hours event and really make it a public art focus. So we'd have it free for artists to showcase and sell their art to businesses with the goal of promoting and connecting artists with businesses. And our hope would be to financially help the artists as well as help businesses see the value of art in the workplace and encourage them to purchase more. And then other goals would obviously just exploring the opportunities to promote the artists and art, maintain these galleries, and then purchase more artwork. Our third project is capital infrastructure maintenance and signage. How cool does that sound? It actually is pretty cool. The purpose is to support capital infrastructure, which would be new or relocated public art, maintain or repair the public art that we currently have, and then creation of signage. So that would be, creating awareness of what these art pieces are if the city or a public entity owns them. And then again, up to $35,000 annually is allotted for that. And we work pretty close with city staff to implement these projects. And then we contract local artists and businesses to help execute them. So as far as infrastructure maintenance and signage, we've been able to help with Loon Park, and that's the pocket park next to Ellie's Ivy. We repaired and renovated the supporting base of the Loon art sculpture that's there. Pillsbury Park, that's the temporary sculpture garden that we're hoping to develop. It's the undeveloped land next to Urban Stampede. We're working with the Public Arts, DDA, and the Community Development Department here to design what that would be like and make sure we all have a great vision of what that'll be. And the goal is a temporary art sculpture garden because that is land that can be sold and used for, businesses and such. So the idea is we would also have signage there letting people know that it is temporary and these pieces would be able to be transferred to another place in Grand Forks. So we've been contracting with artist Adam Kemp for consulting services, and he'll be creating some sculptures. And then through a public RFP, we commissioned local artist MJ Haji Sheikh to create a really cool sculpture that is 90% done. The Northern Rose public art sculpture that you can kind of see there by a bench. We added some ADA accessible sidewalks and seating, and then the old Arbor Park structure, we were able to take that sculpture that was in storage along with the accompanying table that came with it and transfer it to University Park with the city council's approval. We approached, I believe we approached you guys in '23 about that one. And that was approved, and we installed a structural support, sculpture bases, and landscaping. MOU is established, and with all of these sculptures that PAC works with, to develop or install, we have insurance on those as well, or work with the entity that owns it. And let's see here, for continuing goals, we want to continue to develop that temporary sculpture garden and install the sculptures. We'll also have some signage, again, communicating that it is temporary, and we have a Braille signage grant from North Dakota Council of Arts that we'll be doing something fun with. So there's a lot of fun things in the works. And cleaning and repair of city-owned public art structures. So we'd be working with the city to approve a list of identified artwork that needs to be repaired or touched up, and then contract a local artist to do the work of the repair and cleaning, and then add signage as appropriate to that. And then possible future projects in discussion with the city are street roundabouts. Public Works kind of reached out to us, and we were talking about the possibility of maybe having some art sculptures in the middle of the roundabouts. And just making sure that obviously they're operationally functional. You don't want that to be like a trash collector, for the wind and plastic bags, so to speak. So we need to make sure to think through that one as much as possible. And then there's been talk about possible City Hall wayfinding signage. So just kind of helping people with the directional signage within the facility, and possibly have some images that we took from the Public Art Registry and utilize them within the wayfinding signage. But again, some of these are just talked about, nothing official on those two projects. That's the fastest review I could of all the projects that we have going on. I really appreciate your support, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Any questions for Ms. Nelson? Yes, please, Ms. Linsky.
So I'm just curious, who decides what is art? Like, who decides what makes it?
If we commission someone to do the sculpture or that sort of thing?
Well, I'm just really disappointed, like the mural from Town Square is not on here, but I noticed like the clock tower from the Herald Building.
Are you talking about the registry?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not officially, so we haven't really gone public with it yet because
Okay.
we know that there's missing pieces. If you even count the amount that are on there, it's not the full amount of artwork. So we're working on implementing all of those items on there. We just wanted to give you guys something to see of what it will be, so we haven't really unveiled it too much yet. That's why we're kind of waiting for Art Fest. We were also planning on using the weekly newsletter to reach out to all the artists and say, hey, what are we missing? Communicate with us because we want to make sure that we're not missing any pieces that are important.
Okay.
So-
And I was just kind of shocked that the Herald clock tower, is that considered art? I'm not going to say
That's a
what
great
is art
question.
and what isn't, but,
I could have my curator answer that.
yeah. And I
Okay.
just noticed there was a lot of errors, so if the website's not done,
Yes, it is not done.
okay. So you've talked about signage quite a bit. So is that going to be signage that's actually on the art?
So yes, when it comes to signage, that's always a unique situation, right? We need to make sure that we're not putting any signage on art that has not been approved by the artist or the commissioned entity. I think what we would be looking at is doing some very discreet signage, like single color, something small, something that you would see in like a sculpture garden. Very minimalistic because you really don't want the attention to go to the sign. It's really just explaining what it is. So you're talking the title, the artist, the medium of what it is, and then just our idea would be then to just direct them to the registry to learn more about it because having a wordy sign is really not ideal. We want them focused on the art, not the sign.
Sure. And I'm just curious how you put a sign on the Herald building.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think too, like when you have it, it really makes Grand Forks look a little bit boring because there's like a lot of clock towers. So maybe you want to rotate it a little bit, but yeah, I just have other things that were incorrect, but I can email you those separately.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I did have one more question, sorry. The $35,000 for the awareness campaign,
Yes.
what will that be?
I can go back to what that would be. So that will be going towards, a good amount of that would actually go towards the directory, just the printed booklet of what it is. But that would be the design, advertising. That would be basically just trying to have a big awareness campaign throughout the city, drawing people to the art registry and trying to create some like fun communication around art and really just trying to create a more vibrant community and how can we do that. So we're still in discussion with what is the exact strategy, what is our exact way of going about that. So we are just honestly just starting that because we finished the registry. When I say registry, I mean the cataloging of everything in the fall, winter of '03, and quickly threw up an example of what we'd be doing on the Visit Greater Grand Forks website. So this is not really the final item. This is really just kind of trying to give you guys an example of what it will be, but it's completely in draft version. That's why we really haven't gone too far with it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Linsky. Mrs. Susky, please.
I like the registry idea. I mean, a lot of these pictures I've never even seen before, so I think that's a positive. It makes me a little bit nervous when you talk about hiring a director in the future. I really feel that programs like this should be volunteer and we should use that money to go back into the community, like you already said, not to start new positions, not to expand, because then you guys become a little bit more reliant on the funding. And if those funds are cut, then you're going to have to lay people off and restructure. And so that makes me nervous that you discuss maybe doing that in the future. So I'd like to see it all volunteer.
Sure.
I guess a question I have is, how many people have you ever seen sit at that bench staring at the Prairie Rose?
Have I seen?
Yeah, out by the Allaire Center. I mean, we put money to put a bench there. It doesn't really seem like a place people go exercise, so I don't think they would be. I mean, are we
Sure.
utilizing our funds properly by putting in things like that? That's not really a
So some of that
pedestrian.
project was also from private funding that came from the Northern Rose project itself. So there were donors that donated for that, and the vision was to have a sitting area around it, and then have just signage by Zoran, I believe was the artist. So this is just trying to finish up that project to complete it. And there's been lots of discussion, like, do you have a large sign that says, like, this is public art? Because, when you drive by it, people don't necessarily know exactly what is public art, what is not. I mean,
A lot of people
I get
probably
it.
question what that is
Yes.
to begin with.
Yes.
So, what would citizens have to do to remove public art that they don't feel is art?
Oh.
I mean, because, who's actually
Sure.
approving exactly what is being put up in our community?
Well, we do approve all of our projects through community development before we do them. So as far as PAC's concerned, we will, any of our projects that we're working on with you guys, we make sure that it's approved before we move forward with them. Like private public art pieces
I
that.
guess the two things that I really
Sure.
have an issue with is the Prairie Rose. It looks
Okay.
like crumbled concrete with rebar. And the ghost combines, which now people are telling me they're better because they're sitting on pieces of crushed concrete, which I mean, they look horrible.
Sure.
They're not, it's not a pretty sight. I mean, just because we crushed up some concrete and set these white ghost combines on top, I don't think that did anything for the look of the art display.
Sure.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, when the ghost combines first came to town, did they have lights on them? I believe that they did, and now I don't ever see them really lit up. Are we maintaining our art even, because now, what is it?
If I may, quick, I don't think we want city council to ever be deciding what's art and what's not, but we haven't. We have largely just focused on the infrastructure to support some of that. And each of those projects, I believe, has come individually before council to be approved by council. So we've only approved those other pieces, not the art itself.
Mr. Weber?
President Sandy, please.
The Ghost Combine art display, like it or not, was 100% privately funded and is on private property. It's not a city deal at all, and everyone's welcome to enjoy it or not enjoy it on their own. There's lots of art that I don't like, but there's lots of art I do like too, and so I think we should try real hard not to denigrate the people that are working, putting their money where their mouth is, trying to make our community better. I think I'd like to say, Mr. Weber, that you and I've been here a long time. We were here when Mary Strinden and Novak imploded, and we haven't seen progress related to public art since then until now. And what we're seeing from Ms. Nelson, and from, if you look at the board that she's working with, it's an incredible group of leaders within our community that are working really hard to try to do the best that they can for our community. And I think what she's showing us, and sure, there might be some, in the preliminary stages of any project, there are errors. I appreciate that PAC is willing to come, and Ms. Nelson's willing to come and stick her neck out and try to provide a glimpse into what they're working on. And I think if this is just a glimpse of the future, we're in really good hands. I'm so proud of what they're doing, and I think that they're doing a great job and have gone on a great path for our community. These are the things that we've been talking about at city council meetings for years, and we're actually seeing the action and seeing them come to fruition. So, Ms. Nelson, I really appreciate what you've been up to and what the rest of the board has been doing. Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, President Sandy. Thanks for that context and perspective. Ms. Zasowski, I interrupted you. I apologize.
I guess just to clarify, because it was my understanding that the art is maybe still owned, but there is a contract with the city where we must maintain and pay to have the structures put on. And so how does that work?
The public artwork,
Well, just
specifically the
like,
Northern
let's
Rose?
just use the Prairie Rose. That's not on private property, it's on our property, correct?
Okay, is that?
I think that's Canada property.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's on Canada, and so I think how that PAC got a funder to fund the public art itself. What the city agreed to do is put in some of the infrastructure in and around that area. So when you look at the bench and the ADA sidewalks and et cetera, that's from the city of Grand Forks. I think the city of Grand Forks paid for some of the landscaping around there. And then the Park District agreed to maintain, we'll call it the infrastructure. And certainly we don't own the public art piece itself. That would be PAC or whatever nonprofit it is. So that's how that project all came to be. I think it's important that it's created conversation. So I think what they wanted to do is create a conversation and maybe pros and cons, and it certainly created that. And discussion. So, it checked that box. People tried some things. There's been some criticism. We haven't done anything really major since in that way. And hopefully, as President Sandy said, hopefully that's not the last major public art piece that we put up on a major corridor that we participate in it, because I think that would be, that shouldn't be the message we're telling the community is, if something's not perfect, don't come back ever again, because from what I understand, art, there's no perfection in art. And so hopefully that's the attitude. And the other attitude we wanted, think about that roundabout on 5th and Confusion Corner, I guess, is we wanted that the hope was that we would have folks from engineering or public works come to light, not only try to engineer a project, but to think of ways that they could make it more interesting. And that's a concept that's coming forward too. Not that it would be disruptive, but it would add some spice and some flavor to our community, because nobody wants to be in a beige community where it's dull and boring. And so hopefully we don't become that, but it takes some courage and it takes some leadership and it takes some ability to stick your neck out, because it's easy for all of us to do absolutely nothing. And we never want to get, I think from an administrative perspective, that we want to be thoughtful and bring things through city council. But, if we kind of send out a message that if you do something that's one person out of 10 might not like, we're not going to do it, I think that would be sending the wrong message in our growing and dynamic community. And I think that's the point of this presentation here, is that we're trying to keep conversation. And as Councilmember Osowski, as you talked about, you like the registry. We're here to try to get some feedback on what things you really like that we should really move forward, because you're our board of directors. And so that's really the intent of what do you like, what don't you like, and we'll focus our energies on what you really like and enjoy, because you are representing the community of Grand Forks.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you again, Ms. Nelson.
Thanks for your time.
Right. Move on to item 3, discussion items. Item 3.0, special events, Sigma World. This was just added today. Ms. Lundmark, please.
Chair Weber and members of City Council, the special event program has received an application from Sigma Chi and Sigma Nu for a joint event that occurs annually for the last several years. They use snow fence and around their front yards, which are adjacent, and have a DJ, kind of an end of the school year celebration. And as this year they submitted their application, I've kind of summarized items on your staff report off of their application. In review by city departments, including also the UND Police Department, there were some questions or concerns that they felt they wanted City Council to weigh in on regarding the operations, to make sure you were okay with the operations the way they've occurred in the past. They allow people to, they do have commingling. They allow for people to bring in their own alcohol. They don't provide any alcohol or food to attendees. So it is mainly just a gathering place for students and people invited by students to congregate and share an evening at the end of the school year. This is a little different than how some other city events are run when we have concert-type events, so bringing it forward to you to weigh in. I did attach an email to this that I received from the University Police Department this morning with some comments and concerns that they had regarding this event. There are members from the event planning group, Sigma Nu and Sigma Chi, that are here in the audience, willing to provide you input or information and, answer any questions or concerns that you have regarding the event.
And maybe Council Vice President, maybe Sherry, maybe we should, looks like they're in the back row there, they look like fraternity fellows to me. Maybe we should have a representative of them to come up here and describe what they've done in the past, what's occurred in the past and what they're planning for in the future. And so I think it would be helpful if one of the members came up and introduced themselves and as part of the event.
Very good. And with that invitation from Mr. Phelan, welcome.
Members of the council, my name is Evan Bogle. I appreciate it. Members of the council, my name is Evan Modal. Just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm a junior here at UND, pursuing a major in commercial aviation. I'm obviously here representing Sigma Chi. First of all, I want to take the time to thank you guys for hearing this, and obviously I understand there's some concerns, and I want to do my best to answer those questions and concerns and hopefully put together a plan going forward. Just brief overview about the event. So yep, it's something that's been done years previous. Simply an end-of-the-year celebration, concert, we have live music, that kind of stuff. We do not sell alcohol, nor will alcohol be provided. It is an event that's open to the students of UND, although it is on private property, so we do obviously limit the amount of people that are coming in and out and obviously reserve the right to ask people to leave. We try to work with the University Police Department to keep things in check. We did that last year, and we also got a noise ordinance last year. We use fencing, like she mentioned, to keep people inside, keep them from spilling on University Avenue and Hamlin Avenue, which are the two roads that are close to both our fraternity houses. The event, I think the time we put on there is 11:45 p.m. is when the noise or variance ends. So that's kind of what's going forward here. I would like to take the time to also acknowledge that obviously last year there were some problems with the event, which I think probably generates some of the concern that we're going to talk about here today. And that's obviously why I'm here, that we're committed to doing our best to not letting those things happen again. Mainly the cleanup after, I think, was a huge problem, and honestly I'm quite embarrassed by it. As a member of those organizations, it's unacceptable. I understand how it looks on our perspective. It's also well from the university. I know there's graduation ceremonies going on, I think, the next morning. So seeing the yard like that in disrepair is obviously not a good look for the university. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I know there's some public safety concerns as well. So I'm here to answer those questions as best I can. If you guys have questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, sir. Questions, please. Ms. Lensky.
How do you handle underage drinkers?
Yeah, so obviously, we're not providing alcohol to anyone. We're obviously going to check IDs when people come into the event and that kind of stuff, and we like to make sure there's no open containers, that kind of stuff. So we don't want to see people come in with bags, with backpacks full of alcohol and stuff like that, especially if they are underage. So that's kind of the process we use with that. We have like I don't really know the correct word for it, but I guess an entrance into it with people checking student IDs and government IDs.
Do you ban people? Because
We
no
do,
offense,
yeah.
you could.
Yeah, we will. We do plan on banning people. Yes, ma'am.
And I beg of you to please get more than 2 porta potties.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a good idea.
So if you do you ban for 21 plus and a different color for underage?
This is the first time I've kind of been involved with the planning, so I'm not exactly sure the way it was done last year, but I do think that's a good idea. Probably 1 color for 21 plus, 1 color for under 21. So yeah, and obviously, I mean, like we mentioned, we're not providing alcohol, selling it, or giving it away in any capacity.
And I know, Todd, maybe a question for you. I thought 11 p.m. was kind of maybe that's just the normal ask. Is there a end time that we have to be done?
It kind of depends on the events. We have had events that have gone later. Anything after 10 p.m., we normally would have reviewed by the appropriate department, whether it's, depending on what the activity is, would determine whether it goes to police department, health department, combination of both, or even engineering department if it would be not party event related, but more of a construction related. We have allowed some overnight noise variances to go forward.
I think last year we asked for around that time, and it did go to that time, and I think the University Police Department showed up, and we were able to have things turned off by that time. I mean, we're obviously open to suggestions. I mean, the main reason for this event is we think it's a positive thing for the community. It brings students together, helps promote Greek life, which on UND's campus is actually quite strong, even for a school that's relatively small in the grand scheme of things. It helps promote our chapter and that kind of stuff, and that's really the main driving force behind it as the school year comes to a close. But obviously, I mean, we're more than willing to try to work together to put a plan, whether we have to change some things around or put some stipulations on it.
I think before I'd feel comfortable approving it, I'd like to know your plan for underage,
Yeah.
if it's a band, if it's whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Mr. Weigel, please.
I guess for me personally, I've been supportive of nearly every event that's come to Grand Forks, even when my colleagues and I have disagreed on many of them, whether it's commingling, whether it's events downtown. In my ward, I'm a little bit different, and when I said we dealt with Fufang, I got 4 emails. I'm telling the truth from people within my ward. This event that you guys had last year was one of the biggest events that I got complaints about. It doesn't take from Friday night, when it's shut down at 11 or 12, to Monday morning, when somebody's knocking at your door, and that person's me, to pick up trash.
Absolutely.
And so for me, you do have graduation. It is part of a greater neighborhood. And this isn't on you or any of the other members in the back. It comes down to a leadership. And so in my opinion, the people that may have been there last year set you guys up for failure this year, because I'm hesitant, and at this point I'm a no vote to allow an event like this to continue. If you guys want to work with the Alaris Center or the Ralph or Town Square or something along those lines that is maybe built for events, I'm happy to have that conversation. But as far as something in the front yard when it's taken us multiple days to clean up, and even today, I drove by this morning, there's beer cans and stuff like that. And so when you compound these things, being in Ward 1, I continue to hear about them over and over and over.
Yeah.
And it's something that I want you guys to address and police yourself, and I'd be happy to have the conversation for next year to have a successful event for you guys.
I appreciate your support and definitely feel your concerns. As someone who wasn't necessarily leadership then, but is leadership now, I will agree with you, it was super embarrassing to have what happened happen. That's kind of the main thing. I think we put on the application, we are putting our plan together, we want to have the house cleaned up the next morning, 9 a.m. And obviously, I mean, it was multiple days, and then it kind of got to the point where we're like, hey, this is ridiculous, you know what I mean? And that was kind of the main problem that I think going forward. I mean, I saw the email attached, that the main problem was, I think, the noise and then the trash, obviously. So that's, I mean, completely valid concerns, but that was kind of our thing going forward, is that we want to put together a plan that this is our pledge, you know, clean up the house next day, 9 a.m. These are the things we want to do and work with you guys, put a plan together. But I completely understand where your point of view is coming from and respect it and everything.
Very good. Ms. Osowski, then Mr. Vian.
Just to follow up, I'm Ward 2.
Okay.
So
I'm not really familiar with the wards. Where is that encompass?
You're in my ward.
Okay.
So I've had multiple calls from my constituents about the trash, not just during your parties, but I know one of them picked me up and we went and drove around, and there's trash outside your guys' dumpsters just laying around. It's disgusting. And so I'm going to have to say that I'm probably a no vote at this time, because you guys can't even seem to clean up your trash year round. You know, we have couches and furniture sitting outside on lawns on rainy, soggy days during the summer months. There's trash all over, winter or summer. I guess I don't really have anything too positive to say about the sororities or the frat houses at this point. So,
Mr. Vian.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective on this. and many of you may not be aware of this, but I was the mayor's appointee to work with this UND on the Committee for the Reduction of High-Risk Alcohol Use that had been taking place back in 2015 and in the Springfest days, and we worked diligently hard to get alcohol away from these kinds of events, especially at this time of the year, right at the end of the year before UND students. And we were very successful. We created other events, non-alcohol related, that could happen around the community as a substitute, which is successful. I was unaware of this, and for those reasons and all the implications that came about after of those events that happened year after year, I can't support this event either. So.
Very good. This is the City Council's Committee of the Whole.
Okay.
So we are the first look at agenda items. We make a recommendation tonight for the council and for their consideration next Monday. This item, I believe, will be on the agenda again next week. But at this time, if there's no further questions or comments, I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll just say one more thing, Mr. Weber.
Please.
A lot of the Greek houses, fraternities and sororities do a lot of great work in our community. And that's something we appreciate. And so, like I said, I'm willing to have the conversation moving forward. But I think time and place may need to have a little change. And so with that, I'll make a motion to deny the request for the event.
We have a motion from Mr. Weigel and a second from Ms. Osowski. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to the motion, same sign.
Aye.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to 1. With
I'm sorry, 5-1.
5 to 1, with Ms. Linsky dissenting. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, thank you.
And that moves us to item 3.1, application for Class 3 beer and wine on sale only, license from Fargo Sunset Hotel, LLC, DBA American, Grand Forks. Again, please.
Chair Weber, members of City Council. We have received an application from a group of individuals, Fargo Sunset Hotel, who are in the process of acquiring the American located on South Columbia Road. The American has, since January of 2014, offered a restricted, or held a restricted Class 3 license. They offer on-sale only beer and wine, and they target that usage just for guests of the hotel, including, sometimes they've done room service. It's a rather small facility. They don't allow any off-sale, which is typically allowed with a Class 3, but that was a stipulation that was put on to make their operation and handling of alcohol similar to other, our more higher level, Class 5 hotel motel that also includes the hard liquor. So they're not allowed to go off premise and do a lot of things that other standard alcohol licensees can do.
I move
Very
approval.
good. Thank you, Sherry. We have a motion from Ms. Osowski, second from Mr. Vian. Any further questions or comments?
Question, Mr. Weber.
President Sandy, please.
It doesn't, none of the owners are listed on the application. Who are the owners?
I listed the, Councilmember Sandy, I did list the owners in the staff report. That should have been on the second page. I can read those off.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all-
There's no,
please.
there's,
Go ahead.
there's no, where do they live? Do they live in our
Actually,
community? Who are
one of
these
the,
people?
one of the owners lives actually in the community. And they currently do also have partial ownership of some other properties within Grand Forks that they manage, including, I believe, the Country Inn hotels. They also have a hotel property in Fargo. There are two that list addresses in, let me just look down, because I do have their full applications here. I have, one is in Illinois, two are in Illinois. but I do also, I have two in Grand Forks, three actually in Grand Forks, and one in Fargo.
Anything further, President Sandy?
Thank you.
Hearing nothing further, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Lundmark. Item 3.2, award bids for 2024 to 25 aerial spraying and 2024-5 aerial spraying and 2024-6 mosquito control chemicals and equipment. Mr. Hanson, please. Good evening.
Members of the committee, again this year we did not have any bids on aerial spraying, so as we request to negotiate if we need to do aerial. And similar to last year, requesting approval of the bids, we do have a piece of equipment that we want to surplus and then probably sell on auction. So other than that, I'll answer any questions.
So we have a two-part staff recommended action. Questions or comments from committee members?
I just have a
I have a question.
Mrs. Sowski, please, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. President Sandy.
No, can he turn on his microphone so the rest of us can hear him? Thank you.
Yeah, that is turned on now, so we'll come back to you in a moment. Mrs. Sowski, please.
Have we ever had aerial spraying? Are you talking about like with an airplane?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
We have, I believe the last time we used it was 2014.
Oh, okay. So we haven't used it since. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the list of chemicals on there, but I guess it's better than being bit by one of Mr. Gates's genetically modified mosquitoes. So with that, I move approval of both, the surplus and the bids.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second, a motion from Mrs. Sowski, second from Mr. Weigel. President Sandy, anything else? No.
No, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanson. Item 3.3, implementation of new records management system dash 365 labs. And good evening, sir.
Good evening. Tonight we're looking for approval to move forward soliciting a contract with a new records management system. The vendor would be 365 Labs. A little background on this, a little over a year ago, the Public Safety Answering Point, our dispatch center, started looking for a new CAD program, a new computer-aided dispatch program. You probably recall in, I think, January, they decided to move forward with 365 Labs, and that was approved. What we're looking for is moving forward with the records management side of that same program. There's significant benefits having the records management and the CAD programs be from the same vendor. Currently, we have separate vendors, and it's kind of like an iPhone and an Android interacting. Some of the things work, some things don't work. When we have the same vendor providing CAD and RMS, we have a lot more efficiency. We did efficiency studies on all of the vendors we'd looked at. 365 Labs was by far the leader. Overall efficiency improvement we saw was about 49%. Some of the key reports we do, like burglaries and domestic disturbances, we saw up to 65% efficiencies. So significantly quicker report writing capabilities with this new system. We estimate that the efficiencies will save us about 3,000 personnel hours every year, meaning that's 3,000 hours our officers will not be sitting behind a desk writing a report. They'll be out on the street, preventive patrol, community engagement, that sort of thing. This program also allows us to remove a couple of systems we're currently using, such as M-Files. We pay roughly $17,000 a year to use this one particular program to package and transfer our case information to municipal and district court. We'll be able to eliminate using that. We're going to see efficiencies in reduced holdover overtime. Right now, officers are required to complete their reports by the end of their shift. A lot depends on those reports being done, so officers are oftentimes staying late. I think last year was a little over 1,100 hours officers stayed late writing reports. With roughly 50% efficiency, I think we can safely estimate that we're going to reduce about 50% of that cost. But when you look at the overall program being so much more efficient overall, I think we're actually going to probably see greater reductions in that holdover overtime as well. Officers throughout the day, even when they're busy, should be able to stay on top of the reports, writing a 5 to 8 minute report versus 18 to 20 minute report. They should be able to get a lot more of that done on time. One of the weaknesses that we have with our current records management system is it's a state-run system and we don't own the data. We don't have direct access to the information. Any time we need information, statistical data or so forth, or if we want to make a change in the system and try to incorporate a drop-down menu or something like that, everything has to be done through a third party, and it just reduces efficiency and capabilities that we have with adjusting the reports to fit our needs. With this new vendor, 365 Labs, the data would be ours. We can customize it and tailor it exactly the way we need it. We anticipate being able to see true paperless police reports. Right now, we generally have paperless police reports, but there's a lot of attachments that we still have to add to the report. And when those get turned in, one of our records specialists has to scan that, find what case it goes to, and add it to that case file. So there's a lot of people doing things that aren't necessarily going to happen moving forward if we switch to this new vendor. That's just kind of a flavor or a feel for the overall efficiencies we're going to be seeing with this process and program. And I know I drafted a pretty lengthy staff report. I'm sorry about that. But we're really just looking for approval to move forward and try to solicit or fashion that contract so we can get exactly what product we would be looking for with this vendor and make sure that they're going to be the vendor for us.
Very good. A compelling series of arguments, Deputy Chief Mackey. Any questions or comments? I have a motion from Ms. Osowski, seconds from Mr. Veen. Any further President Sandy, please.
Yeah, Chief Mackey, I know that we're going to see lots of savings in time and savings in money in different areas, but the total cost of this package annually is considerably more expensive than the total cost of our current package. Where are we, maybe this is a question for Mr. Phelan, what's the plan for how are we going to pay for the additional expense for this CAD system, which I'm fully supportive of doing. I think this is great. I think this is going to be a great benefit to our departments. I'm just wondering how we're going to pay for it.
Council President Sandy, I think there will be obviously a human resource savings to not only the police department but the public. We will have to incorporate an additional line item expense as part of this, software system as part of the annual fee. But I think our goal is to have overall better service, have our officers on the street more. And I think finally, Chief Mackey, is that we needed to upgrade the system regardless. And so we would have always had an additional expense from the system that we have currently. And this sounds like the best value that we have integrating with our current our new PSAP system that we're going to have.
It definitely does present the best opportunity for us to truly have our officers where we want them, and that's on the street, just being visible, making traffic stops. Our latest annual report shows a significant drop in traffic crashes and a significant increase in some of our traffic enforcement. There's a correlation there. When our officers are on the street, we're able to directly affect some of these things. We have a crime analyst that has been searching for crime hotspots within the city, and he's keeping track. He's directing our patrol towards these areas, and he's able to show significant drops in criminal activity in those areas. So it's just so vitally important for us to make sure our officers are on the street as opposed to in an office doing reports that have to happen.
I can't argue any of those points. I agree with them 100%. I still don't understand how we're going to pay for this. Where is the money coming from?
The money will come from the general fund.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. No problem. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Item 3.4, preliminary engineering agreement for project number 8722 North 4th Street, reconstruction of First Avenue North to Second Avenue North. Mr. Karienko, please.
Good evening, Chairman Weber and members of the committee. As you may recall, last summer, we were awarded up to about $2.2 million through the Urban Grant Program. It was a competitive program that's 80% federally funded and then 20% city share on that one. What you have before you is kind of the first step in reconstructing North 4th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue, pretty much making this look very similar to what we've done on Demers Avenue, North 3rd Street, and the block just south on North 4th Street. We ended up sending out an RFP for engineering services for this project. We received a total of 3 proposals. Through the evaluation process, it was determined that CPS was ranked the most qualified for the work. We ended up going through a process to negotiate the scope and fee for that. Total for that came just under about $360,000. That is covered on that 80-20 basis for federal funding. And so what staff is recommending this evening is approving the preliminary engineering services agreement with CPS and the DOT in that not to exceed amount of $359,907.08 and any necessary budget amendment. The reason why we're looking for the budget amendment is this is actually a 2025 project, so we don't currently have this item in our budget, so we'd be bringing those funds from 25 into 24.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Mr. Weigel, second from Ms. Osowski. Questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Veen, please.
Yeah, just one quick comment. I look forward to having the project done, and then once the construction is done across the street, we can continue it all the way to University Avenue.
That's the hope. We submitted a application for that this past fall, so we'll hopefully find out about that this summer.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.5, bid award for project number 8758, District number 779, 2024 Mill and Overlay. Mr. Lieberman, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Vice President Weber, members of the committee. This project before you is our annual asphalt mill and overlay contract. It has been presented to City Council on a couple occasions, and you may recall that our focus this year is the near South Side neighborhood and 17th Avenue west of Washington. This past March 7th, we opened bids for this project. We received 3 bids. The low bid was submitted by Knife River Materials and is roughly 6% beneath the engineer's estimate. So we continue to get good bids this year on our projects. We are recommending award to Knife River Materials in the amount of $3,217,189.14 and approve a budget amendment. I'll comment on that. We were very aggressive this year in identifying failing pavements, so we expanded the scope a little bit more, and thus we're requesting what amounts to about a 5% budget increase, which would come from Fund 4815.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move approval.
We have a motion from Mr. Weigel, second from Ms. Osowski. Further questions or comments? Mr. Veen, please.
Just one question. Knife River, of course, is Bemidji. The others are local. I understand they've done work for us in the past that should, that warrants their selection. But in doing these projects, do you do them all one at a time? Or, I mean, this is mill and overlay over a wide number of projects in different areas, right?
Councilmember Veen, we do give them the full scope of of the contract at one time, but we put stipulations. For example, near schools, they can't start before a certain date, they must end by a given date. So in this case, 17th Avenue by 20th Street, we do have a water main replacement project occurring, so we want that to happen first before Knife River comes in and starts the work there. So we put stipulations like that on when they can do the work.
Okay, I just want to make sure because they're out of town, they're not like you start and then you go until you're done. There'll be start and stops and whatever is needed for the various projects. Okay.
Our last experience with Knife River was a few years ago, and at that time, they came into town, they accomplished their work very quickly. It was a little bit of a tornado, kind of ripping through town, but they got the work done very quickly, which we're hoping they do the same this year as well.
Very good. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item 3.6, bid award for project number 8789, district number 781, reconstruct 40th Avenue South from Belmont to Cherry. Mr. McGuire, please.
Thank you, Chairman Weber, members of the committee. This is the reconstruction of 40th Avenue South. You've seen this a couple times before. We received 3 bids for this project on March 21st. They range from $2.07 million to $2.42 million. The lowest bid was received by Op Construction in the amount of $2.077 million. This bid was 15% below our engineer's estimate. City share is estimated at $1.66 million for this project. And at this time, we're looking to award the contract to the low bidder, Op Construction, in the amount of $2,077,543.55, and approve any necessary budget amendment for project number 8789.
Move approval.
I have a motion from President Sandy, second from Ms. Osowski. Questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Linsky, please.
So does this include the bike path?
This does include the bike path.
So they'll tear up the sidewalk and replace it with the
Yep.
3-foot wider bike path?
Yep, we'll be replacing a 5-foot sidewalk with an 8-foot bike path, and that bike path work is 100% city cost.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item 3.7, plans and specs for project number 8811, district number 604, 2nd Avenue North, a storm sewer from Columbia to North 25th Street. Mr. Lieberman.
Thank you. This project was presented before the City Council last week, so you may recall it replaces 600 feet of storm sewer along 2nd Avenue in the UND East Campus neighborhood. The existing pipe is undersized and roughly 70 years old, so this will accommodate the Memorial Village developments, the softball development, a lot of good development that's occurring on UND's campus that's generating a lot of stormwater runoff. Engineering department is completing the plans and specifications. The current cost estimate is $440,000, and this project is special assessed 100% to the benefiting properties. The benefiting properties are primarily the developer, University of North Dakota, and the USDA Human Nutrition Lab has a very small piece of that. So there are no residential homes impacted by this property.
Very good.
With that, engineering is recommending approval of plans and specifications and direction for engineering to advertise for bids.
Very good. Motion from Ms. Osowski, second from Mr. Weigel. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Mr. Lieberman. Item 3.8, plans and specs for project number 8557 Columbia Road Overpass Rehabilitation. Mr. Karianka, please.
Thank you once again. Project before you is the Columbia Road Overpass rehabilitation. Initially, when we started off this project, we were looking at the replacement of the pot bearings as well as the pier bearings, as well as sandblasting and painting the structure. As we ended up getting into more of the evaluation of the structure itself during the design process, ended up noticing that the deck itself was becoming rather smooth. So one of the things we were looking at to try to alleviate that and allow the cars a little bit more friction as they're going up and over is adding essentially some diamond grinding to add in some, what's the best way to call it? Essentially additional places for the tires to grip onto the roadway surface. In addition to that, we'd be sealing the deck as well. That way then you have that additional texture, and sealing it up. That way then we don't have the salts getting into the concrete as well. In addition to that, we're also looking at the finger joints on either end of the bridge. A number of years ago, we had some issues along those finger joints where during the heat of the summer, they ended up buckling, popped up. We had some issues where we had to close down half the bridge, or there were a few instances where the bridge was closed entirely for a short period of time. We're trying to catch these and stay ahead of these, so we're noticing that these finger joints, they're starting to bottom out, so we want to get this readjusted. That way then we can hopefully avoid a situation like that in the future. Right now, this project has about $6.7 million in federal funding on an 80-20 basis. Total project cost, including engineering, is about $10.2 million. So one of the things we have done, since there is that differential, is we have requested additional funding from the DOT, as well as we have submitted a grant application for the Flex Fund as well to see if we can make up some of that difference. Right now, I believe we have about $2.8 million budgeted for this project, and right now the city share is estimated to be about 3.5. So when this does come to bid, or for the bid award for this project, we may be looking for a budget amendment at that point in time. And beyond that, we're looking at a bid opening for this project in June. This summer, we're hoping to get the texturing of the deck as well as the finger joints taken care of. That way then we can keep the bridge open, probably one lane in each direction. And then next year, because of the long lead times on those bearings, we'd be probably looking for a full closure in '25. We're trying to keep that to the summer. That way then we're not impacting the traffic around UND, but there likely will be some periods of closure in '25. And with that, staff is recommending approval of plans and specifications for the project.
Motion from Mrs. Sowski, second from Mr. Weigel. All in, questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.9, create district for project number 8793, district number 783, reconstruct Knight Drive from Columbia Road to 400 East. Mr. Letexier.
Thank you, Chairman Weber, members of the committee. This project consists of reconstructing the existing roadway on Knight Drive from South Columbia Road to 400 feet east. The roadway functions as a cul-de-sac that serves as the primary entrance for multiple apartment complexes as well as other businesses. The proposed reconstruction will replace the existing concrete pavement, improve the storm sewer system, and update the ADA curb ramps. The total construction cost for this project is estimated to be $600,000. A portion of the project cost will be funded with a city share, as current city policy is to fund 80% of the cost of reconstruction projects for local streets, with the remaining 20% being assessed to the benefiting properties. The city share is estimated to be $480,000, which will be funded from the Street and Infrastructure Fund 4815. This project is not currently in the CIP, so a budget amendment will be requested at the time of a bid award. A project timetable is attached to the staff report. So with that, staff recommends to approve the engineer's report, create the special assessment district, and direct engineering to prepare plans and specifications for project number 8793, district number 783, reconstruct Knight Drive from South Columbia Road to 400 feet east. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments? We have a motion from Mr. Vian, second from Ms. Lunsky. I have a question only indirectly related to this, and maybe it's you or for Mr. Grasser. We have a lot of budget amendments coming up. About what's the total of those coming up, and would they all come out of this year? They would all come out of this year, right?
Chairman Weber, yes, that'll all come out of this year's funds. Sometime the dollars are there in the overall pot of money, and we are making notations on individual projects that may have slight overruns in and of themselves, as opposed to doing one large one. We're doing them individually. So cumulative effect. Typically, what will happen here, we'll put together the budget, and it'll be a year previous, right? And we're going to get some things that come in higher than anticipated, some things that'll get pushed back and be later than anticipated. The other thing that you see on these federal projects, because we've debated about this on the 6 years, on the CIP, should we budget that project 3 different years? Because you got an early year where you're starting to do the engineering, you've got a year when you're doing the construction, and then you might have engineering on the year after when you're filing things up. So rather than complicate that document, most of the time we show that in 1 year, and then we'll ask, like some of the previous comments, we may amend that budget, but it may be within the overall budget. Because again, especially on federal projects, we don't know exactly when they're going to get bid. The DOT will move things around on us pretty regularly. It's not a criticism, it's just the way it is.
Right, and we can't know the total amount until those bids come in and we've approved those. And this is not unusual, is what you're saying?
No.
Very good. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously. Item 3.10, wastewater treatment facility Phase 2, project number 8569, construction services agreement. Ms. Parvey, please.
Good evening, Vice President Weber, members of the committee. Thank you. Tonight, we're looking at bringing forward the agreement between the city and A2S for the construction services for Phase 2 of the wastewater treatment plant improvements projects. Which project number is 8569. And that contract is in the amount of $4,499,772. This is the oversight that we would typically use for a project. We had brought the actual project to you on March 4th, and that was approved. And so we just didn't have the contract available at that time to bring to you that evening. I'm not sure there's much more to share, unless there's questions.
Questions or comments for Ms. Parvey? We have a motion from Mr. Weigel, second from Ms. Linsky. Anything further? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Parvey. And item number 3.11, funding application to the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Program for the Gateway plus Greenway renovation plan, known as Community Green. Very good. Ms. Parvey, please.
Thank you again. So last month, we actually had looked at what the master plan included, and since that time, we've learned that in order to apply for the funding that we can through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the area that is required to meet the match would be south of Demers Avenue. And so we had looked at that entire area of what we could include in the application, and that total cost is almost about $7 million. That excludes the area at Town Square, where we had talked about some renovations there as well. The area to the north of that, which included the pedestrian bridge and some other features, that doesn't fit into the requirements for the actual program that's set up through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It gives priority to projects located in economically disadvantaged areas. And the reason is because they want to help underserved communities address outdoor recreation, and support projects in cities that are densely populated and urbanized areas that create either new outdoor recreation spaces, reinvigorate existing parks, and then form connections between people and the outdoors. So that's why just the area south of Demers Avenue along the riverfront area is looking at being revitalized. The initial application is due at the end of April, so April 30th. That's an application that North Dakota Parks and Rec actually submits for us to the National Park Service. If that application, that initial review is accepted, then we actually have to do a full application starting in November, which takes a full year, and then we don't actually get notified of any award funding until November of '25. So if we submit an application with a certain dollar amount for a project, it would be at least 2026 before we would implement any of those. So right now, we're suggesting, or based upon the comments we received from committee, we were looking at including everything in that area to support redevelopment. If there's a desire for council to do less than that or not do that project, we don't have to do that either, but that's what we were bringing forward for you tonight to discuss and provide feedback on.
Yes, Mrs. Husky, please.
I guess my only comment is it really makes me nervous throwing that kind of money, I like the Greenway, but just on that side of our flood protection. I mean, not only are we gonna have to pay for 50% of it, but we're also gonna have to, if we put a bunch of elaborate structures or whatever goes down there, I mean, it floods multiple times a year sometimes down there. We're gonna have to pay to clean this and maintain it. I guess I'm just kind of wondering what we're gonna use to actually support that stuff. I really like the bike paths and allowing people to, get outside and be mobile out there. I really enjoyed the Greenway takeover when we had that, but I just, a lot of the things make me nervous. I know that, like in the plan, there are some buildings down there. I know we talked about that sometimes they can be removed, but at what cost? I mean, we're gonna have to pay someone to go down there, remove it, put it back. What, a couple times a year? Hopefully just once. And also, we have such a limited summer also. I mean, how long is it gonna take for the city employees or whoever to even be able to, like, if it does flood, like, how long is it going to take before this is even up and running? And how much time, like, of our precious summer is going to be kind of wasted? I guess, I support a lot of these things, like the playgrounds and stuff, but, like, as for the buildings, I would like to see those, like, protected by our flooding system. I mean, there's a reason we put that there. I mean, it wasn't just because we wanted a Greenway, it was to protect us. And so we didn't have to rebuild. And now we're talking about spending, almost $7 million on that side of our flood wall. And that really concerns me. I know that we have and this was just something that I was kind of thinking of, like we have where our old water treatment plant was, where we put out an RFP, right? Like, if a lot of these structures the city wants, why wouldn't we put some of those there? And that's right by a Greenway opening too, so maybe we could kind of go down onto the Greenway and utilize some of that space, but keep more of the permanent type structures on this side of our flood wall. I don't know. I mean, I'm okay if you guys want to go and apply for grants, but I don't want us to get carried away on stuff that we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, if it's going to be flooded out. It makes me really nervous.
Thank you. Yes, one thing we have talked about is we would include components of the initial design where everything we build is flood-proof, removable, easily cleaned up. As you're aware, we do get flooding in the Greenway, and we do have some places that are pretty easy to reopen up because it's meant for that. And so we'd carry that through on the design. We've had initial discussions with Houston Engineering on some experience that they've had working with RDG, who put together the plan working with us on components and features that we could have, real natural features that are almost meant to be flooded per se. But this area in particular, and I respect your opinion and concerns there, this area is a little bit higher. At least components of it are higher that don't often receive as much flooding. So we have looked at that, as well as kind of the elevations and how frequently we do get high water there. But absolutely, all of those would need to be considered if we're going to put additional features in there.
Maybe the next time that you guys come to committee with this, could we maybe get a map with the different, levels of how high, like where are our points that are lower,
We can share
that
that,
are more
absolutely.
subject to flooding versus what is not?
We can even share that in between now and Monday. But absolutely, we'll incorporate that into the design and be looking at that closely as we determine what is placed at what elevations. And we have to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, of course, and there's rules on how much fill you can put in, as well as elevations and how it can be built up. So we'll have to take that all into consideration as well.
So is working with them part of the $7 million then?
Yes,
Like,
we
is that-
we had included that as part of the design.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a real rough estimate because it's based upon a master plan. So it's, that can change over time, but we would come back to you with different components and still would like to get more public input as we go from a planning document to an actual project that we'd be looking at, but that would be contingent upon funding as well.
Very good, very good. And we'll start with Mr. Veen and then move to Ms. Lensky, please.
Sure. Well, it is an exciting project, and it's fun to be able to see all the possibilities here. One of the couple questions, is there some flexibility in the scope, as was discussed about? We might be able to spread it out, we could do some closer to the water plant or whatever. I mean, there would be some flexibility in that, but
There would be for an overall plan, Mr. Veen, although this particular funding is identified in this small area because of the Justice 40 requirements that they have. And so we would be looking at just this area south of Demers from there to the railroad bridge.
To the railroad, so between the two bridges is where you
Yep.
are with this one here.
Yep, unfortunately. Not that we as a community can't continue to look at what we do, and obviously we are looking at what we can do near the water treatment plant as well, but to carry that vision further on, south.
And I would assume we'd need regulatory agency reviews from what, FEMA and
Yep.
the Corps, I guess,
Yep.
primarily those two.
Absolutely.
And none of this is on FEMA-acquired land that has restrictions, is there?
Nope. Down in this area, we don't have any deed restrictions, but we'll have to pull that and show that. And then if we get far enough along and are able to do a project in this area, then we'll have to do some replatting and deed that land so that we always provide it for recreation in the future. And that's part of a funding requirement, but we can talk about that if we're so fortunate to receive funding to continue.
And it does look like most of what you're proposing here is on the higher part of the ground.
Most of the, improvements.
Yeah, because I think I'd be really, really nervous about some of that gets low and moderate fund, because you get those fluctuations, but
And that is
again,
true,
it looks to me like most of this is relatively higher. So it'd be interesting to see in the final version, that we are observing that. So.
Yes, and absolutely. We'd bring that back. We'd make sure that council was approving anything that we were going to build, obviously, down in that area and part of that process.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lensky, please.
So I think one of your questions was, should you submit the whole as a process or just south of the Sorley Bridge?
Right now, we can just submit south of the Sorley Bridge, so we can only include the area, and that's where the 7 million estimate came from. That's a real rough estimate, but we just kind of included everything at once. We can reduce that dollar amount. We can do just a certain portion of it if council doesn't feel we should ask for that much for funding.
Is there a reason we would ask for less?
We have to match it, so if we ask for 7 and we would receive it, then we'd have to make the decision if we'd want to, do that large of a project and fund that.
And it does not include anything with Town Square. That's separate.
That's separate.
I think the sloped lawn amphitheater warms my heart. I think that's something Grand Forks has needed for a very long time. I'm just very excited about this project, so kudos to you and your team for putting this together.
And President Sandy, please.
I think Ms. Carden just answered my question, but just to clarify, if we put in for the whole amount and we're awarded the whole amount, we can pare it back, we can still pare it back at that point, or are we required to put in the money and do the whole project?
I'm not sure. I guess we can clarify that as we get into the final application, because initially the first application is just, are you interested in this project, and it doesn't meet the criteria, and then they ask us to come back and do the full application, which is, we should know by November 1st of this year.
Thank you.
Just Vice President Sandy.
Yes, Mr. Phelan, please.
President Sandy, I think to his point, President Sandy asked a lot of good questions, how would we fund this? And I think the first time we were around here, it would be your flood protection Greenway Capital Fund, of which has, and that fund has a use tax that goes into it, so there's an ongoing revenue stream from the use tax that used to pay for the capital of the initial flood protection Greenway project. Now that's going into this fund. And I think, Candy, it's a little over $1 million a year that goes into that on an ongoing basis. Also, anytime we annex property into the city, Those have, those initially had future assessments, then those future assessments are paid into this fund too. So the theory was if you didn't pay for the flood protection project the first time, once you get annexed, and you're paying for the renewal of both the flood protection and the greenway system. That fund has about $9 million into it right now, but there are things that we've done. You've approved updating flood stations with new electronics. That came from this fund. You've offered us to use for flood wall maintenance projects that have gone through that. We've overlaid greenway paths with those same funds. So we do have a nice pot available. I would think with this project, I think the positive part is what Melanie said is that it's going to go through a pre-screening process through the state of North Dakota. If we're so successful, then we're going to go on to the next step. So I think there's some stop gaps along the way with this project. The other one that we have brought to you is also in the Greenway is the Riverside Pool. And Melanie has said that we're going to go ahead and ask for a grant on that too. We'll likely have a 1-to-1 match on that too. And so I think we were estimating maybe a $5 to $6 million investment in the Riverside Pool to, move it forward over for the next 50 years. That might have a substantial local cost share too. So just naming off some of the big projects that we have, I think as you look out, we've built up a cash balance, and we wanted to do that because we know the first 25 years of the flood protection greenway system, we're going to have less capital maintenance. We can about imagine the next 25 years, there's going to be more capital maintenance on that. So we want to be judicious on what we're doing. And I think the good part is that we do have an ongoing revenue stream for both the use tax and the special assessments as we move forward. But, we have put it together a 6-year CIP, but we should anticipate, similar to the Alaris Center, there's going to be major capital improvements in the future. So a flood station right now, we're just doing the electronics, and at some point in the future, we're going to have to do the pumps and some of the wells and some of the piping, and that's going to be more expensive rehabs in the future. So that's kind of where we're doing. So we want to be able to do nice amenities on the greenway. At the same time, we are keeping our eye on all the various large structures that we have to maintain along the way too.
I think the one thing I'd add is I think we might be successful in reducing that cost in Riverside Pool by being able to do something a little bit creative there, but that is still a project that is going to cost us some funding if we decide to do that.
Mr. Weigel, please. What's that?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Motion from Mr. Weigel, second from Ms. Lunsky. Anything further tonight? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which brings us to City Council member discussion matters. Mr. Weigel.
No, thank you.
Ms. Osowski?
No, thank you.
Ms. Linsky?
No, thank you.
Mr. Vian? Council President Sandy?
Thank you, Bill.
I'll just quickly note that Saturday night I enjoyed being at the University of North Dakota's Feast of Nations celebration, and we had city staff from at least Public Health, Engineering, Law Enforcement, Public Works, and the Mayor's Office, and I apologize if I missed anyone. They're helping out. It was a great event. And with that, be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move adjournment.
Motion from Ms. Osowski, second from Ms. Linsky. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thanks.